We have seen throughout the semester evidence of how certain behaviors and lifestyles can contribute to aging and death. In this video, we will go beyond what causes people to die and focus on psychological reactions to that death. Much of the research on death focuses on terminal illness, which refers to any end-stage diseases that cannot be cured or adequately treated. Thus, there is reasonable expectation that it will result in the death of a patient. The Kubler-Ross change curve model was introduced by Swiss-American psychiatrist Elisabeth Kubler-Ross to describe the process patients with terminal illness go through as they come to terms with their own death. It was later applied to grieving friends and family as well, who seem to undergo a similar process. The stages begin with denial, in which individuals believe the diagnosis is somehow mistaken and cling to a false, preferable reality. When the individual recognizes that denial cannot continue, they become frustrated, especially at proximate individuals. Certain psychological responses to a person undergoing this phase might be, "Why me? It's not fair. How can this happen to me? Who is to blame? Why would this happen?" This is particularly pervasive in younger populations who are diagnosed with an illness, or to parents of children who are diagnosed with an illness. The third stage involves the hope that the individual can do something to avoid the illness or cause for grief. People facing less serious trauma can maybe bargain or seek compromise, and a common example is a person who negotiates with God for more time to live in exchange for a reformed lifestyle. Assuming the person does not miraculously recover, Kubler-Ross noticed a decline in energy as the individual despairs at the recognition of their mortality, and in this state the individual may become silent, refuse visitors, and spend much of the time mournful and sullen. Although some patients become trapped in this melancholy, many also progress into acceptance. In this last stage, individuals embrace mortality or the inevitable future. People dying may precede the survivors in this state, which typically comes with a calm, retrospective view for the individual and a stable condition of emotions. Now, this model has been applied to many other contexts besides terminal illness that seem to follow a similar trajectory. For instance, it was recently mapped onto the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. Researchers recognize that there's denial, which we see a lot of early on, and then there's the anger when we're told to stay home and take away activities. There's bargaining of saying, if I just do it for a short amount of time, it will go away. And there's sadness. When will this end? Finally, there was acceptance, the recognition that this is happening and we need to figure out how to proceed. We find control in this acceptance by taking over washing our hands, keeping safe distance, and learning how to work virtually. We went through this process as a society. Understanding this emotional response to illness is important for caregivers to provide emotional as well as medical support. For people with serious but non-terminal illness, there is palliative care. This type of care often involves a high degree of medical intervention, as well as utilization of specialized methods and practitioners. The goal of palliative intervention is to defer progression of the disease, thus avoiding it becoming terminal. However, if the disease does become terminal, then patients can be transferred into hospice care. This type of care steps away from medical interventions to stop progression of the disease and instead focuses on physical and emotional well-being during the patient's remaining time. Rather than trying to remove the illness, hospice care focuses on reducing symptoms, controlling pain, and providing socio-emotional support. The goal of many health psychologists when studying hospice care is understanding the psychosocial variables associated with more positive experiences and how to enable terminal patients to reach the acceptance stage. For instance, research suggests that care provided at home can be beneficial by providing a more comfortable and familiar environment for patients compared to the hospital environment. In fact, modern palliative and hospice care providers attempt to create as home-like of a feeling for patients as possible, given the positive psychological benefit. Now, both types of care are focused on enhancing the remaining life of the individual. However, the line between them is blurry. That is, when does an illness become terminal? Or rather, when do people stop engaging in interventions to prevent the disease from becoming terminal? It's important to understand that many medical treatments often have side effects that can range from mundane to severe. These effects can be physical, such as hair loss, dramatic weight shifts, or reduced energy, as well as psychological, such as shifts in identity, social withdrawal, and cognitive decline. There can also be many economic and social factors that make treatment less appealing to many, such as the financial strain that treatment could place on family members. For most of the past century, the decision of when to halt treatment has been the purview of doctors, but there's a growing movement to allow individuals to make that choice for themselves. Many people believe it is their right to be in control of how and when they die. For instance, people can have do not resuscitate or living wills, which detail a person's desires regarding their medical treatment in circumstances in which they are no longer able to express informed consent. There is also a growing movement that argues human beings are entitled to end their own life or undergo voluntary euthanasia. The next video takes a philosophical look at the issues of how we respond to illness, specifically examining the ideas of assisted suicide and the value of life.